Imagine driving out to a beautiful country estate to meet your partner's parents for the very first time. They seem welcoming, polite, and elite. But beneath their perfect smiles hides a secret so twisted, it will make your blood run cold. Tonight, we are breaking down Jordan Peele's psychological masterpiece, Get Out, a waking nightmare where you can't even trust a friendly smile. Stick around because the terrifying truth behind this family's obsession will completely change the way you look at your neighbors. Our story follows Chris Washington, a talented black photographer from New York, who is packing for a weekend getaway to meet the parents of his white girlfriend, Rose Armitage. Chris has one major hesitation. Do they know I'm black? Rose laughs it off, assuring him her parents are progressives who would vote for Obama a third time if they could. But the road trip there takes a dark turn when they strike a deer. Watching the animal die triggers an intense wave of trauma for Chris, reminding him of his mother's tragic hit-and-run death when he was a child, a night he sat paralyzed with fear instead of helping. When they arrive at the estate, Rose's parents, Dean and Missy, welcome Chris with open arms. But the vibe is instantly uncanny. The family's cooking and groundskeeping are entirely done by black servants, Walter and Georgina, who behave like stiff, brainwashed robots. That night, Rose's erratic brother, Jeremy, gets aggressive at dinner, trying to put Chris in a chokehold while rambling about his genetic potential. Spooked and unable to sleep, Chris slips outside for a cigarette. But things suddenly get worse. Out in the pitch black, Walter runs at full speed directly toward Chris, veering off at the last second. Up at the window, Georgina stands frozen, staring blankly down at him. Retreating inside, Chris bumps into Missy, a psychiatrist who offers to cure his smoking habit with hypnotherapy. Before Chris can decline, she begins tapping her silver spoon against a porcelain teacup. The sound paralyzes Chris. Missy forces him to relive the night his mother died. Suddenly, the floor beneath his chair vanishes, and Chris is cast violently downward into a dark, infinite void, the sunken place. He looks up, trapped at the bottom of a deep well, watching the real world through a tiny, distant screen. Chris bolts upright in bed, convinced it was a nightmare. But the next morning, his craving for cigarettes is entirely gone. Walking through the house, he catches Georgina. When he mentions his unease, her face locks into a bright, artificial smile, but a single tear rolls down her cheek as she repeats, "No, no, 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 no." The next day, dozens of wealthy, elderly white couples arrive for the Armitages' annual backyard party. Chris is paraded around like a prize horse at auction. Guests make unsettling, racially charged comments about his strength, his skin, and his physical build. Relieved to spot another black man in the crowd, Chris introduces himself. But the man, Logan, wears a retro suit and talks like an aristocrat from the 1950s, wanting to show his best friend Rod, a suspicious TSA agent back home. How weird the vibe is, Chris sneaks a candid photo of Logan. The instant the flash hits Logan's eyes, something in his brain violently snaps. Blood streams from his nose. He lunges at Chris, screaming with pure terror. "Get out! Get out! Get the fuck out!" Dean claims Logan had an epileptic seizure, but Chris isn't buying it. He convinces Rose they need to pack up and leave immediately. While Chris prepares upstairs, Dean stands in the backyard next to a large portrait of Chris. Silently, he hosts a bizarre, silent auction, selling Chris off to the highest bidder, a blind, elderly art dealer named Jim Hudson. Anxious to escape, Chris searches the bedroom for his car keys. Instead, he stumbles upon a hidden box of photographs. Inside, his heart drops. He finds photos of Rose deeply in love with Walter, with Georgina, and with dozens of other black men and women, including Logan. Rose had lied about everything. She is a hunter, and Chris is her next target. Chris runs downstairs, trying to keep his cool. He begs Rose for the keys as Jeremy, Dean, and Missy block the exit. Rose fumbles in her bag, crying and pretending to search. Then, her face instantly turns ice cold. She holds up the keys and whispers, "You know I can't give you the keys, babe." Clink. Missy strikes the teacup. Chris's muscles lock, and he collapses, sinking right back into the sunken place. Chris wakes up strapped to a leather chair in his soundproof basement. A video on a retro TV explains the family's horrific secret, the coagula procedure. They use hypnosis to suppress a black victim's consciousness into the sunken place, allowing Dean to surgically transplant the brains of dying, wealthy white people into their physical bodies. Jim Hudson, the blind art dealer, appears on screen, explaining he doesn't care about race. He just wants Chris's eyes. Jeremy enters to will Chris into the operating room. But Chris has a plan. He uses his nails to pull cotton stuffing out of the chair's armrests and plugs his ears, completely blocking out the sound of the hypnotic teacup. The moment Jeremy unstraps him, Chris fights back, knocking him out cold. Now it's pure survival. Chris sneaks into the lab and skewers Dean with the antlers of a deer mount on the wall. As Dean falls, he knocks over a candle, setting the room ablaze. Chris runs upstairs, overpowers Missy, and knocks out Jeremy once more at the front door. He jumps into Jeremy's luxury car and roars down the driveway. But in the blinding chaos, he strikes Georgina. Overcome by childhood guilt, Chris can't leave her to die. He puts her bleeding body in the passenger seat. That is his near-fatal mistake. Georgina, who carries the consciousness of Rose's grandmother, snaps awake and attacks him, causing the car to crash violently into a tree. Chris crawls from the wreckage, but a rifle shot rings out. It's Rose, flanking Walter the groundskeeper, who is possessed by her grandfather. Walter tackles Chris to the ground, pinning him effortlessly. With seconds left to live, Chris grabs his phone and fires the camera flash directly into Walter's face. The flash breaks the grandfather's control, and the real Walter returns for a fleeting moment. Realizing the horror he's been forced to perpetrate, Walter asks Rose for the rifle. The moment she hands it over, Walter turns the gun and shoots Rose directly in the stomach, before turning it on himself to finally free his soul. Rose lies bleeding out in the dirt. Chris walks over, placing his hand around her throat, but he stops. He refuses to lose his humanity. He lets her go. Suddenly, flashing red and blue lights illuminate the forest. Chris freezes, raising his hands, but the door opens, and out steps Rod, his loyal TSA best friend who tracked him down. Rod looks at the absolute carnage and says, "I told you not to go into the woods." Chris climbs into the truck, leaving Rose behind in the dark as they drive away into the safety of the morning light. Get Out is an absolute psychological masterclass that proves the most terrifying monsters don't hide in the dark. They hide behind friendly smiles. Now, I have to know, if you were in Chris's shoes, at what exact red flag would you have noped right out of that house? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, because I read every single one. If this recap gave you chills, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss our next deep dive. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe the channel so you can watch more videos like this.